Hi, class. Welcome to week 5. I look forward to reading your material from your paper this week. So just so you know a little bit about grading, I think I've maybe have explained this before, but I usually, go through the week and read all your discussion boards. So this week I have, your discussion boards and your paper. So it's going to be a lot. So please be patient with me. If I haven't gotten to you and you're like, it's Thursday, it's not that I've forgotten or I don't plan to. It's just there's a lot to look at. So just be patient and I will get to that as soon as I can. This week we're talking about inauthentic sexuality. That's the subheading in your book for Balsic and Balsic. I so sexual harassment, rape, pornography, sexual addiction, all things sometimes that can cause, well, not sometimes, that do cause problems that are unhealthy experiences with sexuality, with sexual encounters. Sexual harassment in the last few years has blown up. We had the Me Too movement, which has been huge, has changed a lot of things. We kind of even began some of cancel culture, right? Which all good things in some ways, in some aspects, in the sense of like people shouldn't get away with treating people as if they're not real, feeling like they can sexual like administer sexual misconduct and feel like they can get away with it or get something out of it in order to give someone a job or, the Harvey Weinsteins of the United States of America. And consent has become huge. Consent is something that we talk about a lot in therapy. Even when I talk about consent, I remember there was this radio message, and I think it had to do with um, medications and like um, basically talking about like, do you have sex with a person that's unconscious? And so the radio, the commercial was saying like no means no and silence means no, and then it just went silent on the radio. And I found that to be so impactful because we have situations where people will take advantage of somebody else even if they're unconscious. It's probably not a smart idea to have sex with someone who is highly intoxicated and or under the influence of drugs. And so we had that situation with the Stanford, I think it was a student athlete, son of a judge, who sexually assaulted a girl who was totally inebriated out of it. And this other students like jumped into the situation, and he did receive some level of punishment, but then that was up to speculation because of his dad being a judge and all the things of influence. And but again, like no means no, no ability to consent means no. And really making sure nowadays especially that if you're going to enter into an intimate type relationship with someone or even a hookup type situation, that this person is willing and wants to have sexual intimacy or relations with you. That is huge. And so talking to clients about that, especially young people about that, it's really important. Because to be labeled as someone who says, to be labeled with a title of like you assaulted me is one, not a great label. And so you want to be very conscientious with whatever decisions young people are getting into, because that's something that could really mess up somebody's life. And it, it's important. It's important to make sure whatever partner somebody is with that they're consenting, even in marriage. I've had clients come in and their husband says that they can have sex with them because they're their husband. And I tell them that that is rape. And if the person's not consenting, even if it's wife, that doesn't mean you get to have sex with them. So there's a lot of, and some of that could be culture, things of that nature, but that doesn't matter when it comes to law. And so that is illegal. That could be that is something you could get arrested for, get charged with, things of that nature. Okay. And so being violated sexually is very, very, very traumatizing. And it affects a person very deeply. Sexual abuse is broadly defined as a sexual act imposed on a child or person who lacks emotional and or, mature mature like mental health or cognitive health or development. That person sometimes is in a dominant position, and they lure a child in or groom a child to be participating in that. You could even have sexual kind of misconduct happen with even an older person, like a person who's a teenager or a person who's like, they feel like they have to because that person seems like they have authority or power. We see this in documentaries like the R. Kelly story. A lot of those girls were older. Now, some were younger, like 13 or 14, but some of them were 16, 17, but it's like this person had power, this person had prestige, this person had something they wanted, and then they get in these situations that are really unhealthy and very abusive. And so, that's something that can deeply affect a person. It deeply affects how they view themselves, how they view others, future intimate relationships. Trauma can cause post-traumatic PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, which definitely needs to be addressed, because people can become triggered. There's a lot of things that can happen as a result of someone being violated in a very vulnerable way. Some people become hypersexual, some people become hyposexual, so they don't want to have sex. Sometimes it can affect someone's sexuality. There's a lot of things that can happen as a result of trauma, and sexual trauma. Um, I would say sexual abuse is something that obviously happens to both men and women. I think women, you hear of women talking about it more than men, but it happens to both. Um, of children who are sexually abused, females are at higher risk than males. Um, but that could be based on reporting, right? People don't report. There's a lot more that has come into light when you think of different documentaries, different movies that we've seen of recent, where it's like people have been exposed for the things that they've done, which is great because that causes, awareness, causes other people to come forward and to be open. I think of the Sandusky thing that happened at Penn State. And a lot of times you see, not to get into socioeconomic status and things of that nature, but you see, people um, pick victims who they feel like they can get away with things, maybe target. And sometimes these has to do with maybe kids that are maybe in lower socioeconomic backgrounds, maybe because they have more availability to them because parents are working, maybe they're home after school, things of that nature. I think for the Sandusky thing, like these were all kids that got like picked to go to this, that like maybe are lower income, things of that nature, and then here he was doing that to children, abusing them. Very twisted, very sick, very disturbing. And so uh, there's definitely something where, incest is a thing, and that is sometimes where people within the same family, there's some sort of relationship that's taking place. Um, the incestuous family may look very normal, very, very, very typical, but inside the home, relationships are very disrupted. Um, there's not there that would where you'd see more of like what we call an enmeshed family. No secrets are shared outside the family. Nobody's really allowed in from the outside. We don't like people in from the outside because we don't want anybody to know what's going on, right? So we're very closed off, very limited with what we allow. It's very rigid family dynamics. Um, and so it can be very problematic, very chaotic, not to mention if incest is happening, no one's being able to talk about it. When there's no clear boundaries or respect for personal space, a child's privacy can be invaded physically, sexually, and emotionally in so many different ways. Whether it's sleeping in a crowded room or in the same bed or having an open door policy that gives free access at any time to any member of the child's family to come into their room. Vulgar talking, exposing them to pornography, erotic suggestions, innuendos. These are all things that can happen. There's a study that happened in New Zealand that found found the post-abuse adjustment of 138 women to be especially poor when there was a negative relationship with parents. One way these children escaped a difficult home situation was to participate in sports and achieve in academics, to get out, right? To get out of the environment, to get free from that. 775 women survivors of childhood sexual abuse, ages 25 to 44. 80% of the subjects also reported emotional and physical intra-family abuse. Family dynamics included frequent verbal coercion, blaming, making threats, and being exposed to various acts of physical and sexual violence. Onset of puberty at a young age, suffering abuse from one's father or stepfather, repeated sexual intercourse, and prolonged abuse. These are factors that contribute to the extensive negative impact on the victim. And so, you know, that's why our job as mandated reporters is so important. We can be intercessory in some of these situations. If something is exposed to us, it's our job to report. Whether we believe the person or not, that's irrelevant. It's your license, it's your job. That's what we're supposed to do. You learned about that in law and ethics to some degree. Not to say reporting is always easy, not that it's hard, meaning like to call and to give information isn't hard. Sometimes we worry about like the consequences of that, right? But that's where we have to remember it's just our job. It's the job of the investigators to investigate. So we just need to let us do our job of like reporting, and then it's up to them to see if what is being said is true or accurate. Sometimes we can see very unhealthy dynamics in families, and maybe it's not something that's said, or maybe it's not clear enough to report, but it's like you're watching it because you're like, something's off here. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right. And so, it's not our jobs to be investigators, but it's something that we might keep in the back of our head. Like something seems strange, and it might be important to keep an eye on that or be mindful of that. Now, pornography, pornography is one of those things that is very detrimental. Your clients might have a very spread view on like what they think porn is. Some people may watch porn occasionally. Some people have an addiction to pornography. A few different people lately, I think it was Russell Brand and it was Billie Eilish, who've talked about how detrimental porn has been to their life, how it's ruined their brain, which is pretty sad. And they were both exposed at young ages, I think 12, 13. The ability to be exposed to porn at a young age is so much easier with the access that we have on the internet. And that's why it's so important for parents to be very aware of what access they give their children with the internet. Yes, it's great to have the internet. Yes, it's, it can do a lot of great things, but there can be a lot of harm as well due to the internet. It dehumanizes people, pornography does. And pornography, like drugs, you start with one thing and it usually can go down to a road to a very dark road, which maybe gets into more intense pornography, or maybe the ages of the people start to get younger because what was doing it for you at the beginning doesn't do it for you now. And that's where a person could start getting in really big trouble, right? With the law. Maybe they're watching BDSM. So it's violent. And then when you want to have intimacy with an actual person, the person could have a lot of trouble. They could end up not being able to have an erection, maybe not be able to get fully aroused. The reality is, like, masturbation is not the same as actual intimacy. And so to think like I can watch a lot of porn and it's not going to affect my sex life is probably not a very accurate thing. And so you might have clients that start saying like, oh, they have these issues in the bedroom. You might want to start asking questions like, are you exposing yourself to pornography? How often are you masturbating? Things of that nature, because there might be a reason why they're having issues with actual sex. Okay. Like one of my professors told me many years ago, like if basically like, if you're expecting what's happening on the TV or the screen to be happening in your bedroom, you might as well leave money at the nightstand, because like what's going on is so not real. It's not real life. It's film. It's edited. It's stopped. It started. It stopped. It started to get right angles and things of that nature. It's really not at all real life. And so to have that expectation of a partner is pretty unrealistic. But pornography is a major issue. As a mom of sons, 4 sons, I very much am like fearful of that. So I try to really regulate access to any sort of technology. I don't think we realize what we give our children when we hand them a device. The World Wide Web is a very scary place for so many reasons. And so even educating parents as a clinician on like what they have a right to do as a parent as far as being conscientious of what their children are exposed to or taking their phones away. We talk about sexting, all those kinds of things. I'm not saying that with my kids yet, but those are things that I talk about with clients, like sexting, like don't put things out there that you can't take back. I think there's a documentary, I'm not saying you should watch it, but there's this very interesting documentary on Netflix. It's called the Most Hated Man on the Internet, and he developed revenge porn, and became so toxic, and it goes down this very interesting path. If you watch the documentary, or some of you probably have seen it, but very, very, once a picture's out there, it's out there. And I try to explain that to people, like people have access to you. I've had situations where clients have talked about their friends' pictures getting put on Twitter. um, you know, young people making really stupid decisions with someone being vulnerable with them, and that's really cruel. Maybe they don't understand it at the time, but how cruel that is. But that could like really damage someone. So there's a lot of choices that we can make that can be so damaging and can damage others. And we need to be mindful, right? And so trying to encourage our clients to be mindful of the choices and decisions they make, especially adolescents, even young, older adults, as they go into maybe the dating scene, they're trying to do internet dating, all these things, and they're trying to navigate. And it's like, you just have to remember what you put out there, you can't necessarily get back. Um, and so to be mindful of that. Sexual addiction is a huge issue. A lot of high risk behavior. Sexual addiction can exist in marriage. It can exist outside of marriage. It can exist at a young age. And it's no different than any other addiction, except that it's involving sex. The hard part with sex is, like maybe too with some of drugs, is there could be STIs that are transmitted. You could give them to a partner that doesn't realize the person has a problem. It's going to affect your life. It causes depression, anxiety, things of that nature. A lot of high risk behavior, maybe being with prostitutes, maybe being with men and or women. A lot of secrecy, hiding, never a good thing. Okay. And so there's sexual abuse. I mean, not sexual abuse. There's sexual addicts groups, anonymous. And so that is something that people can do and participate in to get help, to understand they're not alone. A lot of, maybe it's dealing with their own personal trauma, and maybe they were sexualized at such a young age. It became a coping skill, a soothing mechanism. Whatever it may be, it's important for it to get addressed. So that's a great referral for clients. There is confidentiality in the group, things of that nature. So anyways, just highlighting some things, kind of a heavier subject matter, not as like, not fun. It's sad, it's upsetting. Just makes you aware of like, what's out there. There's a lot of things out there that are very scary and not safe. So I wish you the best this week. Week 5, we're almost done. Week 8, we will not have a live lecture because you guys are wrapping up everything with capstones. We're almost there. I can't believe it's October already. I'm wearing my orange today. And it was kind of fall this morning, so which was actually nice. It wasn't like a bazillion degrees. We're hopefully through the heat waves. Anyways, if you guys need anything, need help with anything, please let me know. Thank you.